Welcome back to the Talk and Shoot podcast. I'm Miguel Dorati, and we're going to talk some shoot on boxing as always. This is Talk and Shoot Boxing podcast number 60. And, the last one, number 59, we took a little bit of a hiatus here, and it was an interesting month for the heavyweight division. The 59, if you want to go back and listen to it, or if you already did, was kind of like a preview of the month coming up. So what we're going to do here is we're going to hit you with a post view of March in the heavyweight division. March of 2018, it opened up with obviously Deontay Wilder coming in and knocking out Luis Ortiz, getting the job done, so to speak. And what we'll talk about here is I don't know if Deontay's getting overly credited for the fight with Luis Ortiz. I mean, the bottom line is there's still a lot of things that Wilder does that are risky in a fight against a guy like Joshua, if that's what he wants to do. And I'm not sure what the odds makers are going to do with that fight, but I'm sure interested in seeing what they do with it. The bottom line is Ortiz won some rounds, I don't know how many Parker won, but it seems like it might be easier to steal some rounds and actually be ahead in a fight against a guy like Wilder. And what that does for Wilder is it puts Wilder in a situation where, he's looking for the one punch, and that works for him. I mean, you can't really knock it. He's knocked everybody out. Against Ortiz, I think it was a risky proposition. And at the end of the day, Ortiz is a 40-year-old. It's a guy that, definitely probably, was more dangerous 4 years ago or something along those lines. But, Ortiz was maybe up in the fight. Ortiz in the 7th round blew his load too. He tried to take Wilder out. And I'm okay with giving Wilder credit for working through that, I mean, he maybe got saved by the bell right there in the 7th, but he had the entire round wasn't great for him. And, bouncing back into the 8th and 9th and just weathering that, it shows something. I don't know if Joshua's going to give him that chance, though, if that happens or if he happens to get dinged up. Then, you fast forward through the month, we had Lucas Brown fight Dillian White. We had Alexander Povetkin almost kill David Price. And obviously the month closed out with, Anthony Joshua and Joseph Parker uniting 3 of the 4, big world titles there. And, Joshua, again, what can you say? This is the 3rd time in a row he's filled up a 80,000 seat stadium. He's visited Cardiff a couple of times. And, he seems to be doing well selling that out. Not a problem there. I think, it sets up his next big fight being back in Wembley and in London. And I don't know, the specifics of it, but it would seem to me like, being back in London for Joshua is going to be a big deal in terms of, his management and bringing him back and, how they can monetize that. The end of the day, you should make more money in London than in Cardiff. As an outsider, I'm guessing. I don't know. But, he's set up for a big fight. And will that be Deontay Wilder? So anyway, this is the Talk and Shoot podcast. We're going to focus on the heavyweights. And we're going to be all over the place with the heavyweights just because the heavyweights are all over the place. Now, overseeing everything going on in England right now is Tyson Fury. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens with him and his comeback. I give him this type of credit. He's an X factor. And by an X factor, I mean, forget about being in the ring, He's going to make things interesting in the heavyweight division. Now, let me tell you what I'm talking about. I'm not a fan. The big bombastic, dancing and singing Aerosmith and stuff like that. Not my style, not my cup of tea. Guys can be funnier, guys can be, more talented. I've seen Fury do, public appearances where he's actually done ring card girl work. For one of Fury's fights there, when circumstances caused Huey to fight, before a very sparse audience and everybody was going home and there were no ring card girls. And so, I mean, he's the big personality, right? I'm not a fan of it as a personality and stuff. He came to the United States and, put on a stinker of a fight in Madison Square Garden. And it was a situation where, he tried to pull that, big talk stuff here. And, it's like he's a foreigner. He's not from the United States. So his style, I don't think, translates well here. But you got Tyson Fury making things interesting, because this is what makes him interesting, is not that stuff. That stuff's show, and I think he knows what he's doing with Smokester. I think he does know what he's doing, to a huge and high extent. When he came over to fight at the Garden, it was back in 2013. He fought Stephen Cunningham, and 2013 was, even then for him, he was still blossoming, becoming the guy that was going to beat Vladimir Klitschko. So, but what Fury's going to do is Fury's going to do something interesting. And whatever that is, does he come back? Could he come back and say, I've been away for a little while. I'm still young. I got time. I'm going to sink my teeth into, 3 or 4 8-rounders, give some guys a chance to get in the ring with me. Get a feel for levels again, and shake some ring rust off. If he says that, and you give him credit with coming back and maybe coming back the right way, but how could you knock him if his next fight is against Anthony Joshua and Fury sidestep Wilder for a bit while they figure things out? Now, in my opinion, Fury Joshua makes more money than Joshua Wilder. So that's going to be the big decision. Now, do you want Fury right now, where he's been off for a couple of years? We know he's been undergoing a drastic weight cut. We know, he's all those things, and then we know he's a big guy. At 6'9", man, I give him credit. I've seen, like I said, I've seen a lot on Tyson Fury over the years. Everything from the uppercut where he punches himself in the face when he was, coming up, to him dancing with the rest of his crew up, while they're training with Huey and I don't know what the other little Fury guy, the other heavyweight they have there, Young Fury, I think is the name he fights under. But those guys, and there were some girls in there and stuff, and it's like, tough people who going through some tough training and stuff, and they were very loose. And it was funny because Tyson's obviously the biggest guy in the room. And, at one point, they all started dancing. There's some music and stuff like that. And, for Tyson to be the most coordinated and best dancer in the room, it says something. And, the other guys don't dance. And it's like, I'm not talking about Latino dancers or, freaking people that dance that are good dancers. I'm just talking about your average dancer. But Fury had some movement, had some rhythm at 6'9", and it's noticeable. But my point in all that is that, if he fights after August, basically, you have Tyson Fury for the first time at 30. And he hasn't been good to himself over the last 3 years. We know there's a lot of cocaine in the beginning when things came apart. He served his suspension. I'm going to assume that he got over that and he's not messing around with that stuff anymore. God bless. Hopefully that doesn't pop its head up again. But, that can't be good for your body, right? That's the point, is at some point, he's giving away a little bit for the momentary pleasure or whatever, but it's not good for your body. After that, it looks like there was a lot of drinking. You know what I mean? It's like, it looks like there was a lot of drinking. I saw Belly. We're talking about Tyson Fury probably about 400 pounds. And, he's the guy that now that his mindset's there, I believe he'll come back and be in shape. And he'll be, ready to go, 270, 250. What's right for him now? He's weighed as big as 270 in the past. He's been, for Klitschko, he was 247. So, I mean, maybe we can come in at 255. And I would reckon that he'd be dangerous at 255 again. The mindset, the skills that, you don't lose. But the thing is, does he go David Price's way? And now at 6'9", at plus 30, is he going to lose a step? Is he going to be less sharp? Does he recognize that in the training and say, hey, let me take a couple of 4-rounders uh, because I got to put some new wrinkles in my style. I'm not going to be able to, shuck and jive the way I did Klitschko. At the end, he fought Klitschko when Klitschko was 38, and he was, on a personal level, Tyson Fury was like 26. Of course, he's going to run around the guy. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, 36 minutes, it's going to show that you're sprier, you're just a younger man. Is he going to lose some of that? When David Price came up, and we'll talk, David Price got blasted again. And please just get this guy out of boxing. He's a danger to himself, really. And it's a shame because, I don't know David Price, and I've made jokes about him. But, those were some scary knockouts. And it was like, after a couple of them, I expected to not be seeing him again. And, we keep seeing him. I think that's a black eye on British boxing. I think it's a black eye on the British Boxing Board of Control over there. I mean, I'm sure they're going to say they had a doctor examine him and he's fine and stuff like that. Poppycock. Look, the bottom line is look at the eye test. When he was coming up, the kid won a bronze medal, and you were looking at a guy that had athletics with him on his side. Tall. Very few people can be that tall and move around and participate in the sport. If they do, they tend to be basketball players, But once you've got that threshold of athleticism, it shows up. You know what I mean? And David Price had that. He could move. He could move for a big guy. He was mean, he had the right mindset, and he could punch a little bit. He had some power. So I could see when he was coming out of the Olympics as a bronze medalist, where things were looking up for David Price. But David Price got old, and it shows in the ring because it has to do with speed and slowness. What scares me in his last fight here, and he fought Alexander Povetkin on the undercard of Joshua and Joseph Parker. So what scares me about this fight with David Price is that Price actually rocked Povetkin a couple times, and he looked okay. If he can keep you at the end of his jab and line up his punch, but he's slow as heck. Povetkin, for all intents and purposes, didn't really look as good as he, maybe should have. You know what I mean? It's like Povetkin came in sharp. He came in at a lightweight for himself. Maybe that was a little bit of a problem. At 229, Povetkin's been, 240, 250. So, what are we looking at with Povetkin? Vamos a corregir eso un segundo. Povetkin's at 229 for Price. He floats around, he's been 230 before, but, he floats around the high 220, so it was his usual self. Povetkin at 38 is no spring chicken anymore. But, he was fighting out of desperation. He wanted to make sure, that he had a knockout in a good performance. How can you not against David Price is the question, you know what I mean? But what scares me is Price kind of rocked him, had a moment, and Povetkin at the end of the day may wind up in a title shot at some point, We'll see how all this works out for him. But, Christian Hammer knocked him out, Erkan Tepper knocked him out, Tony Thompson's knocked him out twice, and those were the ones that should have sent up the red flags, and especially for Price, it was Tony Thompson's a savvy guy in his 40s, big body, so that eliminates some of Price's advantages that way. And then he just proved to be, that was where he was showing himself to be slowing up. And now that he's not as fast as he was, and he's counting solely on skill, and skill for skill, Povetkin broke through in the fifth and dropped him, and he was left, fooling around and with no light in his eyes at all as he sat up and fumbled with his mouth. Come on, who wants to see David Price get hurt again? I mean, like I say, I've joked around. I'll tell you, been like, get the guy an application for Harrods, and they can call him when they need stuff off of the top shelf, because he shouldn't be boxing. And I mean, it hurts to say that because I know the guy's put his life into it. And these comebacks and attempted comebacks that he's been making, I don't know how to quantify that. Is that the sad end of the sport where like does he not have another option? Couldn't he be a teacher or something like that? Teach boxing, teach the mindset, a coach, or is Price just a competitor and needs to be competing? But he's in a dangerous situation. This is five KOs again. Not like they're bad KOs. They're bad KOs. The Povetkin one wasn't as bad as it could have been, but again, it's a one punch that sends him down, and he's just not getting up. You know what I mean? He doesn't get up in the 10 seconds, and he's not there, and he's not composed. And there's been variations of that, and I just think 5 of them is enough. I think 3 was enough, really. So, BFC, please let's see what we got there to be impressive. And maybe rule David Price out of future fights. I hate to do that and say that, but that's dangerous. And what does it do with Povetkin? Well, Povetkin did what he wanted to do. He paid sanctioning fees with the WBO. He performed. I'm going to assume by some miracle that Povetkin will come out of this fight with no positive drug tests. However that is accomplished, assuming that he's been clean since he ran into the problems. But he switched sanctioning bodies, and he's had no beef, so the WBO is probably ready to name him a contender. And then, Joshua Povetkin is not an interesting fight in terms of, mass media. And, we've already mentioned, Joshua has Fury and Wilder ahead of Povetkin by miles as far as, appealing opponents. So why do Povetkin? Well, if you're going to ice the other two, Povetkin satisfies mandatories and that sort of thing. And this is where Povetkin could become more of a dangerous player. Right now, he's just a fringe guy who could walk into a match, maybe if he stays ready and he gets a last-minute shot if somebody's injured and, one of Joshua's opponents injured. Povetkin's a fringe guy right now, unless, remember that his fight with Deontay Wilder was canceled because of the drug test that Povetkin failed. But he had lured Deontay Wilder to Russia for a fight, and he's got a promoter that has the money. Whether it's $5 million or $25 million, the guy has the money. Now, maybe it's his money. So, maybe you don't want to spend $25 million on Povetkin at this point after all the black eyes. Maybe he's not around anymore. But Povetkin's been a gold medalist. He's been in the Russian system, and I'm sure that he's well sponsored. And could Joshua see Povetkin as a little bit of an easy fight, or a fight, against a guy that is, A minus, not an A level, and therefore beatable? And would he risk going to Russia? It would be a huge feather in Joshua's cap. I know people don't like to take risks in boxing, but at the end of the day, you take risks and you win those risks. The payoffs are bigger. And if Joshua were to go to Russia and win a fight and then come back and beat Wilder and unite all the belts, after, the paydays that he'd be making are huge. Now if Povetkin doesn't have the money, Povetkin, I think, they bring him in maybe in the winter, Wilder, rather Joshua in London in a 20,000 seat arena with, high price tickets and stuff like that. Maybe that's something that they would do. He's going to sell out with Povetkin anyway. But the point is Povetkin's a fringe opponent unless he comes up with a huge money offer, and brings Joshua over to Russia. And that would be, something very interesting. I think that would make it interesting. If not, Povetkin's going to be waiting in line at 38. That ain't good for him. So we'll see what he has. So Povetkin comes off of the win with Price, and that's what he's looking at. He'd like to parlay that into a title shot right away. And since he's out of the picture with Wilder, it's got to be with Joshua now. Joshua has the other 3 world titles. Now, how did Joshua wind up with the other 3 world titles? Obviously, he fought on that card. He was the headliner against Joseph Parker this March 31st. Parker bringing the WBO belt to the table. Parker, I was talking to Frank Laturizzo, and Frank is a boxing analyst over at the Boxing Channel in the Sweet Science. And, he's got 50 years in this, and there's nobody sharper than him for looking at things. And the bottom line is that Parker didn't do himself any damage. He lost the belt, took the first loss of his career, but he put on a credible performance. He extended the guy that never been extended the distance to the distance. So, he did what he was supposed to do. And this is heavyweight boxing at this point. Parker's in the picture. He's young. He's now 24-1. The judges' scores read 119, 109, 118, 110, 118, 110 for Joshua. It's the first time Joshua's been to the card. So what becomes this is now Wilder and Joshua. If let's say it is next, let's say Fury says, "Hey, I'm going to wait for them to hash it out, then they can find me for the biggest fight of all time." If Fury says that and Povetkin's offer falls short, and whatever other mandatories or contenders are out there get hashed out and figured out, and we get Joshua Wilder this year, assume it's going to be Joshua Wilder at Wembley in London. And that right there that's it. That's the biggest fight of 2018. I don't care, if Mayweather comes back. It's not even, no, Mayweather's appeal's gone as far as I'm concerned. But, so Joshua Wilder becomes the biggest fight. Now, how do the odds makers look at this fight? Now, I think if they had to make odds for it, before March, it would have been something like maybe Joshua, plus 600, minus 600, minus 800 maybe, a considerable favorite. Wilder, has the good performance against Luis Ortiz, and you might get, lines now where Joshua might have been minus 450. I'm tossing out some numbers, but now with Wilder knocking out Ortiz and Joshua going the distance with Parker, did Joshua, did some of the gloss come off of Joshua in terms of the bookmakers? Are they going to put him at, is this an even fight? Is this an even fight? That's the question that I have right now if it gets made at the books. Because, the American betting public, I guess they're going to bet Wilder, right? And there is a certain aspect of people that, are riding the Wilder bandwagon. But, I think there's still a lot of open questions. I think Joshua is, I tend not to give Joshua credit. I don't know that he's the second coming the way a lot of people are painting him. But what I do think is, he's a guy who dots his I's and crosses his T's. He's got people going to his hometown. He fights a pretty, I don't want to use Frank's term of vanilla because, when he says it's a little bit different, but, he does everything good and well, but, Joshua gets mechanical, he gets, technical, and I think at some point somebody's going to be able to say, look, we caught on to his pattern or whatever, and boom. And then there is the fact that we know his chin can be touched. At least he can be put on the floor, and then from there, see how you close, So I'm not convinced that he's the second coming, but just going the distance once, does that, make people realize that, or are people going to go ahead and, still bet him big? I mean, I don't know. I don't know what the odds are going to be. We'll see if it even happens in 2018. I'm convinced that Wilder's the guy that really needs that fight. I'm not convinced Joshua needs it. That gets balanced out with Joshua would like all the world championship belts, and Joshua might look at the end of the day, Joshua came in 240, Wilder, 220. He is a smaller guy. It's just a fact. He's a smaller guy. They're going to look at each other eye to eye, and it's a smaller, quicker guy who's going to be running in front of him trying to land one big punch. What's Wilder going to do if his one big punch doesn't work against this guy? At some point, that one big punch thing is going to let you down. And he's had a good run of fighting fat guys, until he had 30 fights. And, there's still questions about Wilder and what Wilder's going to be able to do beyond just throw one punch. Is he going to be able to hurt Joshua, go to the body, weaken him, and then take him out up top? Or is he going to be looking around to land his one big punch, So I'm not sure that that the payoff with Wilder, I think the biggest payday is Fury. But I think that the championships and that Wilder's payday is close, and that, the fact is Fury is a little more scary of an opponent for Joshua as well. in my opinion. I don't know. Maybe that's something, Laterzo and the experts may disagree on. But I'd be more worried about Tyson Fury and the mind games. The mind games that Deontay Wilder are going to play are feeble. I mean, that he's better than Muhammad Ali. He just talks himself up in, nonsensical fashion. He's actually turned off a lot of people the more he's opened his mouth and said stupid stuff, basically. So with Wilder, I don't think we're going to get hit with anything, more than, maudlin stuff. But with Fury, Fury's going to really have people's attention on this. And we'll see what kind of doubts he can create, At the end, I think you got Fury who's got to know that, one of the reasons he beat Klitschko was superior mind control. Mind games are the whole thing. He controlled before the fight, and he made Klitschko thinking. He left Klitschko thinking, and when you're thinking, you're not fighting, as Jack Dempsey once said, So, what's he going to do to Joshua? Does he come up? Is there controversy before the fight? Do they meet? Do they fight? Do they push each other? Does Tyson Fury come, sneak up on Joshua and tickle him? Is that the, because Fury's a wacky guy like that, he can be goofy positive sometimes, But at the end of the day, I think it's going to be Fury calling the shots on the media and things like that. And Joshua, he's going to be in a different type of fight there. He's going to be in a different type of fight. He's always going to be, probably for the first time, definitely for the first time in his pro career, look at a guy with some skill, he has to look up to. He's not going to get knocked out. But I don't think Fury's going to come in and trying to knock him out. Fury's going to come in looking for the 12 rounds and say, hey, look, the judges are clearly going to say I'm better because I am. So, I think Fury's a bigger fight. But with all that in mind, Joshua's got to say, look, Wilder, let's just get Wilder out of the way and then line up Fury. And if we can toy with Fury, let's toy with Fury. Let me get Povetkin. Let me get Wilder at the end of 2018. Let me get Povetkin after that. And then we'll talk Tyson Fury. We'll see how he holds out having to wait and not have the shots called. I don't think it'll work out that way. I don't know how it's going to go pop up. But what I think as we exit April of 2018 here, or enter April and exit March rather, but the heavyweight division right now, to me, the most interesting guy is still Tyson Fury. And it almost pains me to say that because, he's got that clown part that doesn't take something serious at some point. And like I said, his performance against Stephen Cunningham in the States did not warrant the mouth that came attached to it. So he's grown a little bit in his games and stuff like that, but if he gives me more unbacked up talk, he's going to fall off, a little bit. But given the respect of a guy that was the first guy to beat Klitschko, and he was an underdog. The thing is, Joshua had already come up his way. We'd already seen Klitschko lost. By the time it was all done, Joshua beat Klitschko in a fight, a little bit different than Tyson Fury. I give Joshua credit. He didn't, steal the game plan or anything like that. He went in, he fought a fight with the man. They both met, clashed, they both went down, they both got up, they both kept fighting. None of that happened with Fury and Klitschko. Fury basically frustrated Klitschko and, ran him around and, won the decision. So Joshua gets credit for that, but at the end of the day, it was Fury who said, look, that unsurmountable mountain of Klitschko is no more. And that's, something that makes it very credible. One of the other fights that was on the heavyweight division, I'm sure we're missing some stuff, but I want to mention Dillian White taking out Lucas Brown. And, Lucas Brown, Alexander Povetkin, Luis Ortiz. We're talking about a podcast of heavyweights where those guys are all known drug abusers. And actually, all of them are two-time, more than one time drugs have popped up on their radar, and they've talked their way out of it, and they're competing at a high level, and they're probably top 10 heavyweights at this point. Brown lost to Dillian White. White is Yet another option for Anthony Joshua, as I've talked about a few times, if Josh wanted to ice Tyson Fury, or if you wanted to say Tyson, don't be David Haye and just sit there and scream for a big fight. David Haye, look, we keep popping up with big names and we could fight Anthony Joshua while Tyson Fury sits. So how is Joshua going to play or where is Tyson Fury going to insert himself? He doesn't want to just come mad out and challenge Joshua, have Joshua shut him down and fight the 4 fights I just mentioned, and not him. So it's going to be interesting where he inserts himself in the heavyweight division. Dillian White is in a good spot. He just has to keep fighting and keep winning. What if Tyson Fury says, I'll knock out Dillian White, or I'll beat Dillian White first and then come for you, Joshua? Dillian White will take that fight. So things are very interesting on the British Isles in heavyweight. Deontay Wilder, I think, could be left over here waiting. If Joshua, the same mechanisms that allow Joshua to ice out Tyson Fury, allow him to ice out Wilder if that's what he wants to do. Wilder's desperate to fight. That is got to be the next fight. Yeah, I'll fight Dillian White. I'll go to Moscow and fight Povetkin. And I'll come back and deal with you guys. That politics is going to be, Joshua could be a stand-up champion and come in and say, we'll fight them all, Wilder first, Fury second, and then, let Dillian White and Joseph Parker and Alexander Povetkin and, Carlos Takam, if you want to add a guy, or Jarrell Miller, if you want to add another American, let them fight a 4-man tournament and wait for me, and I'll fight the winner of that at the end of Fury and Wilder. That a guy who doesn't care and wants to fight, could do that, but I guess boxing's a business, and we'll see how it all plays out. Still very interesting stuff going on in the heavyweight division. I'm Miguel Dorado. This has been the Talk and Shoot Boxing Podcast, number 60. We've been back on our favorite subject of the heavyweights. So much to talk about in 2018. I'm Miguel Dorado. I'm Miguel Dorado, and we've been talking shoot.